Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to decode a brilliantly dark, gothic parable to uncover the intense psychological struggles happening inside, well, all of us. We're diving deep into a fascinating text called the Liturgy of the Threefold Tomb, or as it's sometimes known, the Liturgy of the Ancestral Vault. Now, on the surface, sure, it reads like grimdark fantasy about a ruthless inquisitor and his terrifying knights, but underneath all that, it is actually an incredibly profound philosophical deep dive into the very architecture of our own minds.
Okay, let's start with this chilling concept, because the entire source material really hinges on this one profound quote. The ultimate grudge is the world's refusal to stay small. Think about what that actually means for us. It means that our deep internal desire to grow, to imagine, and to expand is constantly at war with a part of our mind that desperately just wants to keep things safe, predictable, and totally confined. So throughout this explainer, we're going to take an allegorical journey straight down into the darkest depths of the subconscious to see exactly how we manage to trap our own potential.
Section 1. The Fortress of the Superego. Our descent begins at the very top, in the blinding, rigid heights of the conscious mind, which sets up our first major contrast perfectly. Picture a glittering, gilded palace, the gold leaf, the velvet, the royal pretense. That's the polished, conscious identity we present to the world. But right beneath it, a stark, visual contrast to the cold tomb of our internal mental trauma. We're talking jagged architectural bones, damp catacombs, and iron shackles. It's a powerful reminder that our high society delusions usually just exist to bury the messy truth under all of our excluded history.
To really understand this fable psychologically, we first have to talk about the ruler of this gilded palace, the High Inquisitor. He is the ultimate representation of the superego. You know, that part of your mind governed by strict societal rules and intense, punishing self-criticism. His heart is literally described as a fortress built of walls of exclusion and fear. The superego demands absolute stone silence to maintain the world exactly as it is. In this rigid kingdom, your inner fire of imagination isn't celebrated as a gift. No way. It is actively hunted down as a poison of dissent that threatens to tear down the palace walls.
But the Inquisitor doesn't do the dirty work himself. Serving him are three absolutely ruthless knights. If the Inquisitor is the superego, these knights are the ego. They are your active defense mechanisms, acting as the structural manifestations of this dark liturgy. Their one and only job? Managing mental containment. So whenever you have a sudden spark of ambition, what the text beautifully calls the stained blueprints of a messy design, these knights are immediately deployed by your mind to extinguish it, completely ensuring that you conform to the rules of the fortress.
Section 2. The Jester's Trap of Pride. Let's move down a level and see how this internal prison is built, starting with the first of our mental jailers, the Jester Knight. Imagine a knight stalking through your mind's carnival streets, wearing armor forged from a cracked mirror found in the mud. He represents the incredibly fragile persona we wear every day. And he's holding up that cracked glass specifically to expose our dual identities. The fact that we're basically a commoner by day who secretly harbors the stained blueprint of a god at night.
Now, the really wild part is how the Jester Knight attacks us. He zeroes in right on the vanity of the dreamer. He is hunting for anyone blinded by the intoxicating nectar of their own pride. Because when you look into that mirror and delusionally see a flawless champion instead of embracing your own messy, flawed design, boom, the jester strikes. He actually uses your own fire of imagination against you, melting that unchecked pride into the cold reality of iron shackles. It's brilliant and terrifying. He literally locks you up using your own ego and vanity.
Section 3. The Bard's Weight of Memory.
As we descend even further, past his carnival streets, and deep into the skeletal belly of the earth, we run into our second jailer, the Bard Knight. If the jester uses our pride against us, the Bard weaponizes our past. He plays a lute made of dull lead, striking a dissonant chord that totally dissolves any royal pretense into this terrifying, suffocating mist of guilt and fear. He overwhelms us with past mistakes, old regrets, and anxieties, completely paralyzing our ability to move forward.
You can think of the Bard Knight as the high priest of memory. He forces us to stare straight into the bitter fertilizer of our own excluded history. He gathers up the thorns of the past, your old failures, historical prejudices, and transforms them into a literal physical weight against the lungs. He acts as this deeply perverted gardener, because instead of nurturing growth, he's just methodically pruning away the dead wood of hope, making absolutely sure that no vibrant branch of change can ever sprout. It's the total weaponization of memory into physical trauma.
Section 4. The Shadow Stone Silence.
Finally, we hit rock bottom. We are now in the damp catacombs of our psyche, and this is where the Shadow Knight waits. Wearing a mask of silk, this ultimate enforcer serves as an altar to that venomous grudge against potential we talked about earlier. He carries a hidden trowel like it's a holy relic, and he's actively hunting down anyone who still dares to look through the cracked glass and imagine a world as it could be.
This is the grim conclusion of our internal psychological struggle. With methodical, terrifying devotion, the Shadow Knight piles heavy masonry right around the dreamer. He brings your life and your boldest ambitions to a rigid, structural conclusion. Your heroic silhouette is forever buried in these ancestral vaults, and the only thing left behind is a permanent, chilling stone silence. The ego has successfully dragged the bloated superego all the way down into the catacombs, enforcing absolute compliance.
Section 5. The Architecture of Containment.
Okay, let's step back and pull all these dark allegories together into a clear guide, because this perfectly outlines the 3 distinct stages of mental containment our minds build. First, we have exposure and shackling, managed by the Jester Knight, who traps our pride. Second is immobilization via guilt, managed by the Bard Knight, who totally suffocates us with memory. And third is permanent walling and burying, managed by the Shadow Knight, who seals our true potential away in the dark for good.
When we directly map this Gothic fable to actual psychology, we can perfectly categorize our internal struggles. The Jester Knight represents devaluation and projection, breaking down our dual identity by projecting our deepest insecurities. The Bard Knight represents repression and guilt induction, using the heavy weight of repressed history to freeze us in place. And the Shadow Knight? He represents compartmentalization and walling off, using heavy masonry to create that inescapable stone silence. These aren't just fantasy villains. They are the literal ego defense mechanisms working overtime to keep the superego in control.
And so the parable wraps up in the chilling silence of the earth. The real tragedy of this dark liturgy is that the vibrant branches of our future, of our true messy potential, are just violently grafted onto the twisted roots of the world exactly as it already is. We are left with the incredibly sobering realization that our fire of imagination wasn't put out by some big bad external enemy. It was successfully extinguished by the architecture of our very own minds.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question to really chew on. Look into your own architectural bones. Think about those massive dreams, the wild ambitions, the messy but incredibly beautiful designs you once held on to. Ask yourself, what parts of your true potential have you actually allowed your own Shadow Knight to bury away in the ancestral vault? And honestly, do you have the courage to pick up a hammer, shatter that stone silence, and let your fire of imagination burn once again?